Welcome back to another exciting episode of Cyber Defense TV. I'm your host, Gary Malewski, and the publisher of Cyber Defense Magazine. Guess what? I have a very special guest with the coolest title I've heard so far. In the hot seat today, Carolyn Crandall is the Chief, Deception Officer from one of my favorite companies, Chief Deception Officer from Attivo Networks. Carolyn, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
What a cool title.
I know. It's the funnest ever. Who doesn't want to talk to a Chief Deception Officer, right?
I want the truth. Tell me the truth. So, HoneyNet started a while ago. You guys are, in my mind, one of the first players, a progenitor, of taking this concept of slowing down the breach and making it commercializable. How's that going? What's going on with Attivo?
Yeah, it's going fantastic. And it has changed so much from 20 years ago when the original HoneyNet technology came into play. It was a fantastic concept, but where it didn't work was on the operational side, on the scalability, and then really integrating with the other pieces of the security stack to provide more value. And so what's happened in the last 4 or 5 years with deception technology is it solved all of the limitations associated with original HoneyNets. So you can do things like scalability, authenticity, and believability things. You get into things beyond just a honeypot or a decoy into advanced deceptions at the endpoint, application data deceptions, etc. So it has been absolutely fantastic. Attivo Networks was just recognized number 31 in the Like Fast 500.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we kind of joke around a lot about Fight Club. You know, first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about fight clubs. The first rule of deception is you don't talk about deception. So it's actually out there at a lot more places than you would think, but people like to keep it quiet.
So you might have some of the bigger customers out there, some of my favorite companies, but you can't name them, and that's okay. I'm going to name one company. I don't know if they're your customer, but they've had these secret formula. There are two companies that have secret formulas. I found out for over 100 years. Do you know one of them?
You don't.
Coca-Cola. The other one is Heinz. Now, if they put that secret formula in bits and bytes format, not behind a safe in a vault and locked up in the back of the building, and security guards with machine guns onto the internet or intranet, that would be bad unless there was a way to defend against the breach, right?
Right. Well, and it's interesting because there's, on one hand, most people think about deception as better detection for the attackers that are inside the network. And so they're like, hey, let me just capture the attackers as they're trying to do their malware, ransomware, other forms of attack. But there's some really fascinating things that deception has done with decoy documents. And so a challenge is let's say you are Heinz or Coca-Cola and somebody steals a piece of your formula. You may not know, right? Because it may not show up on the dark web. It may just show up in somebody's development. So we have a lot of tech companies, law firms, research hospitals that have really valuable information that they do not want stolen. And so what they'll do is they'll, in addition to setting those decoys and lures in the network, is they'll set these deception documents up. And then they can tell if somebody opens it inside or outside the organization. And then they have some idea, well, this is what they were after. Oh, this piece of IP, this patent, this case file. And it becomes additional counterintelligence for a company to understand what is the attacker after. And then there's some cool things we do around application server deceptions too, where they think, okay, now I'm going to get into maybe a gift card server or something and go steal those cards, where all the while they're just being tricked into a deception environment, where then we can notify the InfoSec team that you've got something going on that you really want to address quickly.
So have you checked into like the amount of time it takes before the data is normally stolen? And then when Attivo is added, and I'd love to know how you're added to the network. Is it virtual? Is it appliance? Is it cloud? Is it a mix? Have you given me more, much more exposure time to protect the real data? In other words, slow down the breach as long as possible so they're in the wrong place at the wrong time for too long?
Yeah. So great question. So there's lots of different stats that are out there, but the ones that we tend to like to use is that it takes about 4 hours for an attacker to get in. We have a chief security strategist who would say, give me 10, in most networks. But so they're quick in getting in, and then it takes them less than 5 hours to make their second hop. So now you've got very short window, and then other people will say it takes 12 to get the data out, right? So your clock is ticking, and then you bundle that with, well, how long is the average dwell time, the time it takes to detect an attacker in the network? And I think the latest stat from Mandiant is about 80 days. So a little bit of an odd, right?
It's getting better. They used to say 270 at FireEye. Now they're up to 80 days.
80 days. And
that's 79 days too long, right?
Yeah, it's 79 days too long. But also part of it is because the ransomware attacks, they want you to know. right, that they're in the network because they want you to pay the ransom. So there are some dynamics that say we are going to get better, and Attivo's done some surveys too to say, well, is that, when we did it was 100 days, does that sound high or low or, about right? And about half the people said that sounds about right. And then the other question we asked was, are we getting better or getting worse, right? Is that going to go up or down? And about a third said it's going to go up, and a third said it was going to go down. And our conclusion was, well, the defenders are going to get better, but so are the attackers. And they're going to use things like, AI, increased processing power, the commercialization of the dark web as a commerce center to be able to buy and sell the things that they want. So they are acting as a very strong community where we are still very segmented from a public and private sector standpoint. We don't share information. Right? We don't even share it with our own industry a lot of times. And there's great programs like the ISACs and stuff that are great at trying to facilitate it, but we're still not doing as good of a job as the attackers are and making that a commercialized marketplace for people to go to. So the net of it is they're getting in. There's all kinds of tools that they can use. They can buy tools. They're going to get in. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes a matter of, well, how fast can you move them? And there's a lot of technology that was never designed for things like, credential theft. And if you get into this information, it says, well, over half of the attacks use credential theft. Well, if you can't detect that right away, then they're going to move through the network very quickly. And even if you stop them, most people will just deflect them, right? Like, I kicked them out of my network, but you don't know very much about them. And then you also don't know what kind of backdoors and other things they've left to come back, right? So they've been gathering all of this intelligence. The defender knows very little. And so the cool thing with deception is that we catch them early. So as they come in and they do their reconnaissance and use different forms of attack techniques that may or may not be caught with traditional controls, is a decoy, right? It looks real. And so they don't know what's real and what's fake. So they're going to take a peek. And then the second thing is they're going to use these other methods to move laterally, which we're going to pick up. And so regardless of the attack method that they're using, or even the attack surface that they're trying to attack on, and we all know cloud adds complication, IoT adds complication, internet connected, everything in industrial control and operational technology. So how do you change your security posture to be able to deal with these things? And the cool thing about deception is we sit across all attack surfaces, so we can look like we can look like a server, we can look like an endpoint, we can look like credentials, we can look like a router or switch on your network.
Can you look like an ICS or SCADA controller?
Absolutely, yep. We can. And
so you can deceive every visible device to the bad guys and keep them busy in the wrong space.
Right, exactly. And part of that is the believability. So, well, first the attractiveness. So I've got to look like the rest of your assets on your network. Otherwise, an attacker, I'm going to go.
Does that take time to set up?
Well, the cool thing with machine learning is no. Because now it'll self-learn the network. And that was one of the limitations of early honeypots is that it took a lot to be able to learn and configure the network. So the machine learning makes the learning the network to say, okay, these are the operating systems, application services.
Or even they use 10.0. something or
MAC addresses.
So you can actually ML, machine learn all this stuff quickly. So I don't have to kind of rebuild a fake network. Your decoys are built for me.
They were built for you. And so we'll learn the network, we'll prepare the campaigns, and you can look at them and say, yeah, I just want to hit the button, and now I want to deploy this, or maybe I want to tweak some things on it. But all that manual preparation has been removed. So you get a big easy button on there for the deployment. And it's interesting, the deployment piece is not actually the hard part about deploying deception. And this is why we spend so much time with companies on their security frameworks. It's like, what is your risk model and policies? And let's let you open up new services by reducing the risk by putting in early detection. And then even in the security controls that they have today, well, how do you know that they're reliably working? Mm. And so we'll put deception again as that kind of next line of defense or that safety net behind it going, well, whether it's a attacker getting through, a misconfiguration, an employee policy violation of people doing things they shouldn't, we can pick up those things where other security controls are just not designed to do that. So it's very complementary.
How often do you have to update the Attivo Networks solution? And is it a VM? Is it a piece of hardware? How is it deployed?
Yeah, great question. So it's all by choice. You can either get in a 1U appliance or you can do a virtual machine. You can put it up in the VPC. We have some really cool technology that is a forwarder technology, so you don't even have to have a device at a remote or branch office location. So a lot of our really distributed customers love this because they can central manage everything and still get the deception out in the remote locations.
So kind of deflect the amount of attacks to the wrong place, but the hacker has no idea.
They have no idea.
And now off in the cloud, you're helping out?
Yeah, so in the cloud too. So we can do a lot of really cool things, especially when you start to think about some of the serverless container and other things that are out there. It's, we can look like Lambda functions, we can look like identity access management keys, SSH, other credentials. It's really cool. We actually just had an advisory board the other day, and we said, well, what's missing? And they're like, oh, this is pretty good. We're happy with how the breadth and the depth of the deceptions that are out there, and we have a very large number of customers that are already in the cloud, but also that are interested in moving to the cloud. And this is helping with that risk framework and model to say that you can get the same thing in the cloud as you get in your current network.
Now, where would you send our viewers and listeners to go to learn more about Attivo Networks? And do you have any data sheets or white papers for that?
Oh, we got a ton of stuff. So attivonetworks.com is the best place to go. There's a whole resource center that's on there, so you can definitely go to that site. There's in all formats, papers, videos, things like that, but wealth of information, or just call us too. We're always happy to talk.
Sounds great. Well, again, this is a great interview. You made it through the hot seat. I love deception. This is my first interview with a Chief Deception Officer. Coolest title I've heard all year. So, boy, I want a title like that. Anyway, you got to check out Attivo Networks. Try them out. I think if you don't slow down the breach, it's going to happen. And you're going to learn a lot in the process. And come back next time for another exciting episode of Cyber Defense TV. Thank you.